Ya, acarkan dari kedutaan kami mendukung siapa?
Siap. Sebentar lagi Pak, saya minta arahan Bu Dubes dulu.
Semangat.
Siap. Tes. Oke. Oke Pak, kita mulai ya Pak.
Silakan, Pak semangat.
Dzień dobry, nazywam Państwu, Her Excellency Madam Ambassador Beata Stoczynska, Ambassador of the Republic of Poland to the Republic of Indonesia, Her Magnificence Professor Reini Wirahadikusuma, Rector of Institut Teknologi Bandung, ITB, our distinguished panelists and moderator, ladies and gentlemen, Bapak Ibu yang terhormat, selamat sore waktu Indonesia. Police Embassy in Jakarta, in cooperation with the Faculty of Earth Sciences and Technology, Institut Teknologi Bandung, proudly presents a webinar on biography bridging Indonesian and polysoil and history to commemorate the 60th years since Professor Jozef Zwierzycki passed away. Professor Zwierzycki is a Polish geologist who drew the first Indonesian geological map. I am Lucas Tambunan, your master of ceremony of this webinar. Before we start, let me kindly remind you to keep yourself muted during the webinar. Now, please welcome Her Excellency Ambassador Stoczynska to give opening remark. Madam Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lucas. Good afternoon, Indonesia. Good morning, Poland. Good early morning, Houston. Hello, everybody. Distinguished speakers, dear professors, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor and pleasure to open today's webinar devoted to commemoration of Professor Jozef Zwierzycki. Today, we will discuss in details a very unique and extraordinary biography. Professor Zwierzycki's life bridges the history of Poland and Indonesia, but also relates to history of the Netherlands and Europe. I would like to warmly welcome Professor Reini, Rector of the Institut Technology Bandung, together with Professor Kusuma from ITB. I would like also to welcome Professor Van Gorsel from the Netherlands, who currently lives in Houston. And of course, warm welcome to our participants from Poland, Dr. Anna Nowak-Górecka and Madam Alina Chrząstek. Last but not least, I would like to thank Dr. Mirzam Abdurrahman, Head of Department of Geological Engineering of ITB, and his team for their efforts to make the webinar possible. I do hope that thanks to our distinguished panelists, today we will discuss Professor Zwierzycki's biography and his achievements from many different perspectives. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the most needed assets in the current world are people holding real and true authorities stemming from their wisdom and experiences. I strongly believe that Professor Zwierzycki's life is the one of the example that can inspire, motivate, and provoke to greater achievements. Professor Zwierzycki passed away 60 years ago. Polish embassy in Jakarta spares no efforts to increase public knowledge about Professor Zwierzycki. On the entrance of our embassy, there is a huge poster of Professor. You can actually see on my back the street of Jakarta, where embassy is located, and we put the banner poster of Professor Zwierzycki with the map of Indonesia, and we are very proud of that. And we would like to commemorate Professor in Bandung and maybe in the other cities of Indonesia. In order to bring Professor Zwierzycki to wider public opinion, we plan to publish a book, probably comics book, about his extraordinary life in Bahasa Indonesia language. Our activities also aim to link the history of Poland and Indonesia. But there is also something more behind our efforts. Professor Zwierzycki's life proved the power of wisdom, the mind of science, the power of belief and patriotism. In today's world, these values are of the great importance. I hope that today's webinar will give us the opportunity to focus on Professor Zwierzycki's professional achievements and his devotion to fundamental values. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador. Moving on to the next point of our agenda, I would like to invite Her Magnificence, Professor Reini Wirahadikusuma, Rector of Institut Teknologi Bandung, to address her remark. Madam Rector.
Ya, makasih Pak Lukas. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Her Excellency, Madam Ambassador of the Republic of Poland to Indonesia, our distinguished speakers, my senior colleague, Professor Kusuma Dinata, Professor Van Gorsel, Professor Goreka Nowak. I'm sorry if I mispronounce your names.
We all do.
Yeah, nice to meet you all. Our colleague, the Dean of Faculty of Earth and Sciences and Technology, Bapak Irwan, and also my colleagues from the same department, Pak Nirzam, dan ada juga Profesor Benjamin Sapii dan all my colleagues from ITB, and other ladies and gentlemen. Warmest greetings from Bandung, Indonesia. It's 3 p.m. now, very beautiful late afternoon. So I'm very honored to be with you all this afternoon at the commemoration of 60 years of the passing away of a gentleman who are very important and praised in his home country, Professor Jozef Zwierzycki. And for the next few hours, we will be talking about biography of bridging Indonesia and Poland's soil and history. First, I would like to thank you very much to Her Excellency Ambassador and all the embassy in Jakarta to contact ITB. This is a continuation of our friendship and collaboration. And I think we all should thank the late Professor Zwierzycki. Because of him, we are gathering together here. In 1930s, Professor Jozef Zwierzycki, he lived in Bandung, where I live now, and he at that time worked as a lecturer at ITB, who used to be called Technische Hogeschool van Bandung, the Bandung. So we are living his life to some extent. So at that time, Bandung was well known as a very beautiful town, nice people. It was even called Paris, France, Paris van Java. Yeah, so I can only imagine Bandung at that time. So I believe he had a great time here in Bandung with his family in the 30s. So Technische Hogeschool is now, we call ourselves Institut Teknologi Bandung, or ITB. Of course, we are growing and serving more students, stakeholders, nationally and internationally. We just commemorated our 100-year journey last year. So I hope that our friends from Poland, and especially University of Wrocław, would visit us. And I'm sure that you too will enjoy your time here at ITB and Bandung. I also learned that the late Professor Jozef Zwierzycki, who has influenced the development of geology both in Indonesia and Poland, he was a self-sacrificing man. I think we all could learn from his experiences while dealing with tough times during World War II. I understand that he bravely escaped from Auschwitz, and soon after, he continued his work, his passion, doing geological activities. We can a little bit relate to his situation a little bit. We are now in the middle of the pandemic. We are having a difficult time, but we also have to persevere, continue doing our work and passion as best as we can. Like Madam Ambassador earlier said that 60 years ago, May 1st, 61 in Wrocław, he passed away. So now it is rather for us here to dedicate our life to the great task remaining before us. As academics, as professionals in our fields, geology and others, and all kind of fields. So lastly, please enjoy the discussion, the webinar, the new friends. I believe we should learn new things every day, as I'm doing now. So thank you for having this event, so I learn new things today. So thank you also for your kind attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Thank you, Madam Rector. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite you to activate your camera, as we would like to take family photo of this webinar. Please look on the camera. I will count 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Thank you. Moving on to the main session, I would like to introduce our moderator for today's discussion, Dr. Alina Schonstek. I hope I pronounce it well.
Yes, thanks you very much. Okay.
Dr. Alina Schonstek was born and educated in Wrocław, Poland. She graduated in geology at the University of Wrocław in 1987. After studies, she worked in geological enterprise in Wrocław for 1 year. She has been working at the University of Wrocław, Poland, in the Department of Stratigraphic Geology since 1988. She received a doctorate degree, PhD, in Earth Sciences in 1996. She gives lectures concerning paleontology, historical geology, and usefulness of trace fossils to paleo-environmental analysis for students of faculties of geology, engineering geology, and environmental protection. She deals with trace fossils, mainly Mesozoic. Without further ado, I will pass the floor to Dr. Alina to lead our discussion today. Dr. Alina, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to greet and introduce all the presenting guests. Maybe I share the screen in order to show. Yes. Share. Okay, is it correct?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you very much. I would like to introduce in short way all the presented guests. Yes, at the beginning on the left is Professor Prayatna Kusumadinata from the Institute of Technology of Bandung, Indonesia. In the middle, Dr. Anna Górecka-Nowak, Dr. habilitowana Anna Górecka-Nowak from the University of Wrocław, Poland, and on the right, Dr. Han van Gorsel, a Dutch geologist from ESO-Exxon Cooperation, USA. We will have a few presentations. At the beginning, Anna Górecka-Nowak will be speaking about the first period of life of Jozef Zwierzycki. The title is Jozef Zwierzycki, Youth and Education. Yes. Then Han van Gorsel will present the work of Jozef Zwierzycki in Indonesia. Yes, in the past, Dutch East India or the Netherlands East India later. It will be the title Jozef Zwierzycki in Indonesia, a Polish geologist in Dutch colonial government service. Then Anna Górecka-Nowak will be speaking about the work of Jozef Zwierzycki in Poland, and Professor Prayatna Kusumadinata about the impact of the scientific contribution of Professor Zwierzycki to the resources potential of Indonesia. Yes, Professor Prayatna Kusumadinata was born in 1936 and educated in Bandung, Indonesia. He earned a degree in geology at the University of Indonesia in Bandung, Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario, Canada, Institute of Technology, Bandung, and a Doctor of Science degree at the Colorado School of Mines in 1968. Professor Kusumadinata taught sedimentary and petroleum geology at the Institute of Bandung, and as he was retired in 2001, he continued giving lectures on philosophy of geoscience. He has also been a consulting geologist for the petroleum industry in Indonesia for over 50 years. He has memberships of different scientific associations. He has written numerous articles in scientific journals and wrote and published books on geology of Indonesia. Dr. habilitowana Anna Górecka-Nowak graduated geological studies at the University of Wrocław, Poland in 1980. For 5 years, he has been working at the Polish Geological Institute. Now she is working at the University of Wrocław in the Department of the Stratigraphic Geology. In this department, Professor Jozef Zwierzycki was a head in 1950. Anna Górecka-Nowak is also the head of this department since 2010. She is specialist in Carboniferous palinostratigraphy, mainly in southwest Poland, and as a university teacher, she teaches paleontology, stratigraphy, and palinology. Dr. Han van Goorsel was born in Jakarta in 1948, but grew up in the Netherlands. He studied geology at the University of Amsterdam, where he finished with PhD in 1975. He had visited Indonesia several times, the first time as a macropaleontologist and petroleum geologist in the 1970s. Then when he joined ESO Exxon Cooperation in 1978, where he had a 31-year international career, he had an opportunity to visit Indonesia several times in 1980s, in 1990s, and he has been also in Australia in 2007-2010. Since he was retiring in 2010, he has continued to work on the geology of Indonesia. He wrote books named Pioneers and Milestones of Indonesian Geology and about bibliography of Indonesia. He has a lot of books on Indonesian geology in his home, yes, in his house. Yes. Maybe I would like to ask Dr. Anna Górecka-Nowak to introduce the first part of life of Jozef Zwierzycki. Thanks.
Okay, I will share my screen. You cannot start share screen. Where the others? Okay. Alina, powinnaś zamknąć, znaczy wycofać się z ekranu.
Tak.
Alina, you should close the screen.
Close. Yes, okay.
Okay.
Dobrze.
Okay, now I may.
Yes. Sorry. It's okay. Now.
Okay.
Share screen, and then
yes, but I don't see first part of this presentation. Is the second.
In the right corner is share, and then
but it's second part, and I don't see first part. It's also open in my computer. And on the, yes, I have it. Okay, I'm here. So I would like to start from the very beginning. It means from education and youth stage of life of Jozef Zwierzycki. But at the beginning, I would like to make short
sorry, Anya,
introduction.
But we haven't seen anything. We haven't seen your presentation.
Okay. I don't know what to do.
In the right corner, you should put share screen, yes? and then share in the right corner.
Alina, I have. I don't know where it's not visible. I have it open. Yeah, it's. Do you see it?
Yes.
Now it's here.
Now is okay.
Okay, bravo. Okay. So I would like to start from the very beginning. Youth and education, 1999 to 1914. I would like to start from some sentences of Polish geography and history, not very shortly, mainly for Indonesian auditorium. Poland is a medium-sized country in Central Europe, and current borders are visible on this map. It doesn't mean that shape of Poland, the territory was always the same. Poland is situated between two important and strong states with hegemonic ambitions, Germany to the west and Russia to the east. Our history is long, and Polish state is over 1,000 years old, and its history is full of dramatic conflicts and triumphant recoveries. At the end of 18th century, Poland lost its independence, and its territory was divided between three neighboring empires: Prussian, it means German, Austrian, and Russian. And just during this time, Jozef Zwierzycki was born in 1888. He was born in a small town in the middle part of Polish land, but it was under Prussian, it means German, rule during this time. You have here a map of Europe, Central Europe from this time, and Krobia is marked with pink mark. It's marked with pink mark. Zwierzycki came from very wealthy family, and this family was very, very old and lived for several centuries in the same city. Parents had wheat mill and shop, and he had three sisters. He was carefully brought up in a traditional Polish family. He knew Polish language only from his home, as he was mandatory educated in German schools. He was a talented and hardworking schoolboy, playing piano and beautifully calligraphed. When he started secondary school, very important event happened. It means in 1902, his father died, and Jozef was then 14 years old. He continued his education in classical gymnasium in Trzemeszno and later in high school in Gniezno. And he passed his final exams in Gniezno in 1909 with outstanding results. He got scholarship from Polish Foundation supporting talented high potentials. So he was able to continue his studies in Germany, in Berlin. From 1909 till 1914, he studied mining engineering and mining academy. And in the same time, he studied geology with paleontology at the University of Berlin. Here you have some pictures of him from this time and with friends. During his studies, he attended a few months long practical courses in different parts of Europe, including iron ore mines in Kiruna in Sweden. In Kiruna, Jozef Zwierzycki learned Norwegian from local workers, and this appeared to be very important during Second World War. Towards the end of his geological studies, Zwierzycki was involved in works on paleontological material from collected by a German scientific expedition to Eastern Africa, Tendaguru. This expedition was focused on collecting remnants of dinosaurs, but Zwierzycki was the second league in the team, so he was working on ammonites. In 1413, Zwierzycki got his doctorate on basis of dissertation on Mesozoic cephalopods. This PhD thesis was prepared under supervision of Professor van Brandza. And 1 year later, Jozef Zwierzycki completed also his mining studies and received an engineer degree. The political situation in Europe during this time was very difficult, and perspectives for the future for young people were getting grimmer, and each day, with each passing day. Everybody around were talking about coming war. Germany was preparing for this war, and Zwierzycki already had in his pocket military mobilization card. In this moment, his supervisor, Professor van Brandza, advised him to apply for a geologist explorer position in the Netherlands, in India, now Indonesia. And Zwierzycki was then 26 years old. I'm sorry. In May 1914, it appeared that Zwierzycki won this competition and became a Dutch official in Geological Survey of the Netherlands, India. He received healthy down payment, 3,000 guildens. It was a very big amount of money to prepare for the departure. He spent those money on paying off his scholarship. He bought things useful in tropics and said goodbye to his family. For the rest of the money, he had given a flamboyant farewell party for his friends. On the end of June 1914, Jozef Zwierzycki left Hamburg on ship Rembrandt for distant Java. It appeared to be just an eve of the beginning of First World War. This travel took a whole month, and Zwierzycki was learning languages during this time. And during a short break in the journey, he visited pyramids in Egypt. This is the end of first part, and now Han is asked to continue.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Okay, I have to, I don't know how to escape.
Mm-hmm. Don't ask me.
There is a button for stop screen, Anna.
Stop screen. Moment. Stop screen, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
You can start to share. Okay. I don't hear you, Alina.
Sorry, Alina, still mute.
Yeah.
Would you please to unmute, Alina?
Yes,
Alina,
sorry.
it's my-
Yes. I haven't noticed. Yes. Thank you very much, Anna Górecka-Nowak. I would like to invite Dr. Han van Gorsel to present the second part of work of life of Jozef Zwierzycki, his work in Indonesia.
Okay. This one. I do this one. Yeah, good morning or good afternoon, everybody. It's a great honor to be invited to present a talk at this about the work of Professor Jozef Zwierzycki in Indonesia. I'd like to thank the Polish Embassy and the organizers for this opportunity. So Jozef Zwierzycki was the only Polish geologist to work as a government geologist in the Geological Survey in the Netherlands Indies for 24 years from 1914 till 1938. And during this time, he made significant contributions to the geology of Indonesia. Although Indonesia was a Dutch colony before World War II, most of the geologists that came to Indonesia in the early 1900s were actually German or Swiss, because there was no geology education in the Netherlands at that time. There was just a mining engineering program with a bit of geology. So at that time, Zwierzycki was probably regarded as a German because he graduated from Berlin, and at that time, as Anna said, Poland was still a part of Prussia or Germany. So most of his colleagues called Dr. Zwierzycki Zwier. So during this presentation, I may do the same thing because it's still a little difficult name to pronounce correctly for me. So Zwierzycki was mostly a regional geologist in the style of the two other most famous geologists in the Netherlands Indies, Rogier Verbeek and Rein van Bemmelen. And he clearly possessed the physical and mental stamina that was required to survive and stay healthy during many years of fieldwork in the remote parts of Indonesia, which at that time was much more difficult to get around in than it is now. I became familiar with Dr. Zwierzycki's work and his maps in the 1980s when I worked for Stanvac. And I was looking for excuses to get out of the office and run field trips for our Indonesian geologists. So during that time, I took this picture that you're looking at here. It's the scene from South Sumatra. And all the hills that you see here are andesite intrusions that are protruding into Miocene sediments. And one of my favorite mountains in South Sumatra is this one, is Bukit Serelo. And it's an andesite intrusion with the remnants of what looks like a volcanic feeder channel. So you're looking at what used to be a big volcano here that is eroded down to its intrusive parts. This area was mapped by the team of Zwierzycki in the 1930s, and it's an interesting place to be in. Oops. So Here's a slide, lots of words, and I have to go pretty quickly. This is an overview of his career in Indonesia. He had a very impressive 24-year career at the Dienst van het Mijnwezen, and later called Mijnbouw. And he was probably the second most productive geologic map maker after Rogier Verbeek before him. He did extensive geological mapping in North Sumatra, 1914-1919, in northern New Guinea, which is now called West Papua, in around 1920. He was in East Sulawesi. He did work on the Jambi expedition in 1925 in Central Sumatra, and he did a number of years of mapping in South Sumatra. So, in addition, he did various map compilations of all the known available data for geological maps in the Netherlands Indies and geotectonic maps. I'll show you some of that later. He went back to Poland 3 times in 1922, 1923. During that time, he renounced his German citizenship, became a Polish citizen because Poland had then become an independent country. And I think Anna may talk about it later. 1928, he got married while he was in Poland. And from then he was no longer a bachelor in Bandung, but a family man, and had 3 children that were born in Bandung. And Anna will also show some of that. So in 1914, he arrives in Jakarta. He had the mandatory white uniform of all sort of Europeans at that time. And he was hired as a temporary geologist, which was a standard deal at the time for non-Dutch career personnel. But he became a permanent employee in 1922, and also was one of the first non-Dutch nationals on the permanent staff. We all like to think the Geological Survey was always in Bandung, but when Zwierzycki arrived, it was still in Jakarta, or in Weltevreden, or Batavia, as they call it at the time. This was the building, which is now known as the National Archive Museum. So when Zwierzycki arrived in Batavia, the geology of the Netherlands Indies was not known all that well. Here you see a map of the status of geological mapping of Sumatra, and as you can see, there's a lot of white and light-colored areas, which mean that areas that have not been mapped or have only been mapped by some initial reconnaissance. So here is the first couple of years he worked in North Sumatra and Aceh. This is now this area here. This was the area of some of the first commercial oil discoveries in Indonesia, and much of the effort was focused on mapping of anticlines in the tertiary basins in this region. Here's one of the reports that he wrote from that experience. So I'll in the next slides, I'll briefly show you some examples of some of the geological maps that Zwierzycki was part of. Sorry. And it's just to give you an idea of the excellent quality of the geological mapping. So this slide is part of a geologic map near the north coast of New Guinea, now West Papua. And this was a multi-year project around 1920, and Zwierzycki was the leader of it for the last 2 years of the project. It was probably also done as by the Geological Survey to identify areas that could be promoted for oil and gas exploration. And this project was probably one of the largest and most dangerous and most expensive mapping surveys in the history of the Geological Survey. Now, they had 4 to 6 teams working simultaneously, each team with 50 to 100 porters and a dozen armed police escort. It had lots of logistical and security problems. And it was all vividly described in a paper by Zwierzycki in 1922. So this 100-year-old map shows a series of anticlines in young tertiary sediments and several localities with gas seeps. Now it's called gasbron in Dutch. There's one here, there's a couple there, and there's another one here. So it's clearly an area with oil and gas potential, but nobody's been courageous enough to actually come and seriously explore this. And during my time with Exxon in the New Ventures group, I always pointed to this place as something that we should look at. But the logistics are always too daunting for anybody to go there. So this map is 100 years old, and it's probably still the best and most detailed map of the area. Another example is from 1925, when Zwierzycki was leader of an academic expedition to a remote area in central Sumatra, in Upper Jambi. And the purpose of it was to revisit a locality of Permian plant fossils that Tobler had first found. And I'm showing mostly here to show you the incredible amount of detailed documentation that Zwierzycki has become known for. Now you see in great detail the different stages of Permian sediments here in this bluish green. And then there's a big area of granodiorites, and then to the southwest is an area of really intensely folded Mesozoic low metamorphic sediments. So this area is not only a key area with for Asian plants, and these plants, by the way, turn out to be clearly of Asian affinity. They're not Gondwanan like many other parts of Sumatra are. So it's it happens to be an area which is quite important for the interpretation of the pre-tertiary geology of Sumatra. And unfortunately, we don't have time to discuss it in detail, but the main point to view here is that on the southwest side, you get these intensely folded Jurassic and Triassic sediments overlain by this granodiorite, unconformably overlain by Permian sediments, which were much older than these sediments, but these are not metamorphic and they're hardly deformed. So what you're looking at is two terrains with completely different geological history. And that led Zwierzycki to this tectonic model for Sumatra, which is still controversial today. But when you look at these geologic descriptions, it's hard to not think that he might be right. So here is his tectonic models of showing these very large overthrusts. So here is this Asian unmetamorphic material thrusted over this wildly deformed, perhaps more Gondwanan material. So this model was accepted by Van Bemmelen in 1949, but after the 1960s, workers like Catilli, Pumangono, Barber and Crow, they promoted different models of Sumatra. But as I said, it's the jury is still out a little bit in that. So after many years of spent mostly on geological mapping, Zwierzycki's life gradually changed around 1925. He went from being a bachelor, spending all his time in the field, to spending more time in the head office, compiling existing data. In 1927, he officially became a manager, and in 1928, he got married and proceeded to have a couple of children. Next slide is, so during his time in head office, he spent a lot of time compiling these geological overview map sheets of the Netherlands Indies at the 1 to 1 million scale. Now here's an example of, as you recognize the bird's head and the bird's neck of New Guinea, showing the status of mapping at the time. And as you see, a lot of blank areas here, like the area of the Lengaloo Fault Belt and the Central Range, where nobody had ever gone to around 1930. He produced 5 more of those for other parts of Indonesia, and they're still pretty good maps. Here's another interesting one. This is a 1 to 1.5 million scale countrywide map showing the main tectonic patterns in the country. And one of the reasons of showing this part of Sumatra is you can see that the geology of Sumatra is now colored in almost all the way. It's much. It no longer has all the blank spots that we saw in the 1915 map before. And much of this work is due to Zwierzycki and his team. So next, in 1927, the Geological Survey finally started with a systematic mapping program of the entire country, theoretically. Even though before that, in the 75 years before that, geologic mapping was much more haphazard and was typically only in areas with perceived economic interest. So Zwierzycki became the first head of the Sumatra mapping project. And as you can see, there were several bright young geologists in the team, like Musper, Van Bemmelen, and Westerveld. These all made names for themselves in the years that followed. So in order to speed things along, Zwierzycki mapped the first 2 sheets of Sumatra himself. Now these were published in 1931 and 1932. Here is just a little example of that map. This is the southern tip of Sumatra. This is Sunda Straits. The Krakatau volcano is just off the map. So, he had a phenomenal amount of new geologic maps that didn't exist before. Here's an interesting group picture of his team. Unfortunately, in 1933, this was in the middle of the global economic crisis, and budgets were reduced by 50%, and the Sumatra mapping project was shut down. It was then merged with the Java mapping program, and in 1934 it was this much reduced team of, and as you see in the middle here, this is Zwierzycki. He's flanked by geologists Hetzel, Musper, Duifjes, and Koolhoven, and this whole team of Indonesian support staff here. So Mr. Van Bemmelen, who is, if Indonesian geologists know one Dutch geologist, it's always Van Bemmelen. He was actually part of that team. It should have been in this picture, but in 1934 and 1935, he was told not to come back from his home leave to cut costs because there was no money for salary. But he did come back in 1936 and went on to write his famous book. So even though Zwierzycki was a big manager now, he took the opportunity to go to the field for field inspections of his mapping team at many occasions. So here is a picture of where he's visiting East Java. And these are his team members. This is Ter Haar, this is Johan Duifjes, and here is the famous paleontologist Rolf van Konigsvald. And here is another picture of that same trip in 1934. They're now standing at the well-known monument that was built by Dubois in 1895 near the spot where he found his first Pithecanthropus. So Zwierzycki, he had many interests, and one of them was the whole developing story of Java man and the Pleistocene mammal faunas. And he published several papers on the project, on the topic. And so finally in 1935, he was promoted to head of what they call the Afdeling Geologie, which is the Geological Survey department of the Bureau of Mines. And as you can see here, he is now in charge of a group of geological mapping, of the volcanological survey, of a paleontological laboratory, and the museum. Tenzin Hock, famous paleontologist, should have been here, but he was at home leave at the time of this picture. So one of the last technical projects that Zwierzycki was involved in was in 1936, when he was asked by the mine owners of the Yang Labong mine in the Bengkulu district of southwest Sumatra to do a final evaluation of the remaining gold and silver reserves, because they were on the brink of shutting it down. And he wrote a brilliant report on it. This is a rare copy of the report where Zwierzycki did the geologic part. Maybe you can see it's signed by the author with kind regards from J. Zwierzycki. And this is a pretty picture of the Barisan Mountains and the Yang Labong mine complex. It's right here. If you notice, this is one of the central valleys along the Great Sumatra Fault Zone, and the mine sits right at the bounding fault of that valley. And here is there's some block diagrams of the mine and the mineralization of the subsurface is taken from that 1936 Zwierzycki reports. What he's showing is that the gold and silver mineralization is mainly concentrated along the big normal faults that you see here. And according to Mr. Westerveld, who was one of his geologists at the time, in 1961, he wrote that this report was long viewed as probably the best description of an epithermal gold-silver deposit in Indonesia. You noticed the incredible amount of detail. So 1938, Zwierzycki reached the mandatory retirement age of 50 and returned to Poland. Before his departure, he received a prestigious award from Dutch Queen Wilhelmina, and he was promoted to officer in the Order of Oranje Nassau, which is very rare for a non-Dutch citizen to be elevated to that order. So, in conclusion, Zwierzycki is known as an excellent regional geologist who made many significant contributions to the geological mapping and understanding of large, poorly known areas of Indonesia. And he was, as a regional geologist, he was not charged with discovering new oil or mineral or coal occurrences or do detailed evaluations of them. Now, his work was more to explain the origins of these economic deposits, understand their settings, and document their areas of distributions, which is greatly needed to progress further discoveries of economic deposits. So his work, as we said before, was of exceptionally high quality. It was documented in great detail, And for many areas of Indonesia, it's still some of the best available geological maps. So what we're left with today is this legacy of publications. I counted 44 in my bibliography. And if you want to know what they are, then you can download this online. We published on a lot of different subjects, and I'm not going to mention this all. But what is regrettable is that most of his work was published in Dutch or in German or in Polish, and all in German in journals that were hard to find, had very limited distributions. So this limited his international recognition that he deserved. And it's also relatively hard for current generations of Indonesian geologists to find it and understand what he has produced, because they typically do not speak Dutch or German. So this concludes my whirlwind overview of Jozef Zwierzycki's work in Indonesia. And I'd like to turn it back to Anna and Alina, who you see here. My wife and I had a very pleasant visit to the University of Wrocław in 2019, and they're standing here at the Jozef Zwierzycki Memorial at the university. They do a wonderful job of keeping the memory of Jozef Zwierzycki alive, and I hope they continue to do so. For some more information, the three of us wrote a little paper a year ago, and you can download this from Berita Sedimentology if you want more information. So with that, I want to thank you for your attention, and I suspect we go back to Alina and Anna.
I thank very much Dr. Han Gorsel for very interesting presentation. It is amazing that Jozef Zwierzycki was involved in development such different scientific fields, yes, as geology, for example, mapping program, prospecting of mineral resources, yes, it was gas or field mine, gas or oil fields and coal deposits, tin, yes, silver, gold, and also cartography, yes, a mapping program, Tectonic, and also in archaeology, yes, he also describes stone tools in caves, from caves in Sumatra. Yes, and Jozef Zwierzycki know also different other famous people. Yes, for example, a great paleontologist, Konigsvald, who named a tiger to honor a work of Jozef Zwierzycki, Hemima Hairodus Zwierzycki. Yes, thanks once again. And now it is opportunity to ask the questions. Yes, maybe we have.
Sorry, Alina, maybe we can continue for the last presenter.
Yes. If we haven't questions, it will be opportunity at the end, yes, of all presentation. Yes, in that case, I would like to invite Dr. Anna Górecka-Nowak to present second part of Jozef Zwierzycki work in Poland.
Okay, thank you. May I share screen now? I'm not sure. Again. Do you see anything?
No.
Not yet.
No? Only you.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm not Okay. Let me. I need still a moment. Share screen. And here is, yeah, I succeeded. Okay. I'm sorry. So I will continue, and I'm afraid some slides will be repeated with Hans' presentation. I would like to start from Polish threads during his Zwierzycki's work on in Indonesia, and later I will go to his work in Poland. And I will repeat that he visited Poland 3 times during his work in Indonesia. First visit was in 1926. It was 5 years after Poland regained its independence, and the state was very young, and many fields were in organization. He participated many scientific meetings and gave some lectures during this time. He became a member of some scientific societies, Polish Geological Society, Polish Geographical Society. He also attended geological excursion organized by Jagiellonian University in Krakow to the Carpathians. It's the high mountains in Poland, and on this excursion he met a young mineralogist, Kazimierz Maślankiewicz. They became friends very quickly, and this friendship this friendship lasted to the end of Zwierzycki's life. As Han said before, Zwierzycki renounced the German citizenship and became a Polish citizen. It was first opportunity to do it for him. During this first visit to Poland, he also met his mother for the last time. Second visit to Poland was focused on wedding of Jozef Zwierzycki with Jadwiga Kowalewska. This visit at this wedding was 5 years after first visit, and if you are interested, it was like this, that Józef Zwierzycki wrote a letter to his friend Kazimierz Maślankiewicz after his first visit into Poland, that he would like to marry, and he is looking for proper woman, for proper girl. And of course, Kazimierz Maślankiewicz showed this letter to his wife, and wife said that proper candidate will be her sister. And on this way, they started to write letters, and after some years, they met, and immediately they married in Krakow, in the main church in Krakow. With Jadwiga Kowalewska, she studied Roman philology, but she interrupted her studies and left with her husband to Java. And after some years, the family grown with 3 children, Artur, Jan, and Jadwiga. And it's the same photo, but without Jadwiga. Jadwiga is missing on this photo. She was probably in horizontal position during this time still, and she's the only only member of Zwierzycki's family which is still alive, but she's very ill, and it's very difficult contact with to her. A third visit to Poland was the longest one. And during this visit, Zwierzycki showed his film made for the aeroplane about the Krakatau eruption in 1928 to 29. Unfortunately, this film was lost during the Second World War in Warsaw. Maybe it's interesting for organizers of this webinar. In 1935, Zwierzycki was involved in the organization of Polish consulate in Batavia. And here you have a photo with of whole family of Zwierzyckis with vice consul. And in the same year, Polish sailing ship, very beautiful sailing ship Dar Pomorza, visited Indonesia for the first time, and Zwierzycki met with a crew of sailors and invited a huge group of them to his home. I'm not sure if his wife was happy, but it happened. And there are some photos from this meeting. Yes, after being retired from Indonesia, from work at the Netherlands India service, geological service, Zwierzycki had opportunity to move to the Netherlands. He was offered to live there, but he he decided to go back to Poland. And on spring 1938, Zwierzycki arrived to Warsaw. I would like to pay your attention that Zwierzycki's life was very strongly connected to different historical events. He left Europe and avoided war just before First World War began. And now in spring 1938, he is back in Europe, and in Europe where situation is very difficult. Zwierzycki family got a very big 3-room apartment in the old building of Polish Geological Institute in Warsaw, and they moved there with all things which they have, with all library, all collections from Indonesia. Some sentences on situation, on changed situation in Europe. In the meantime, between 1914 and 1938, there were major changes happened in Europe. First World War caused great destructions and death of 14 million people. Great empires broke up and new states were created. For example, Poland, which regained its independence in 1918. This green spot on this map is it's the territory of Poland, which borders were stabilized after a few years. In April 1938, Zwierzycki starts working at Polish Geological Institute as a head of oil and salt department. He was also an advisor to the government for oil, gas, and mining. In autumn 1938, Jozef Zwierzycki attended Geological Conference in Berlin. It should be said that it was a very difficult moment in European history because the situation was very difficult as it was day before annexion of Czechoslovakia. And during this meeting, Zwierzycki met Professor Alfred Benz, who was a German specialist on crude oil geology. And you should know that he was under his direct boss was Hermann Goering. Those two men became friends, and they promised that in case of war, they will help each other. It was very, very important event. 1st of September 1939, it was Second World War outbreak. Germany attacked Poland, and 2 weeks later, Soviets attacked our country too. So situation was simply tragic, and many people from Polish Geological Institute in early September left Poland. And Zwierzycki was asked for former director, Professor Karol Bogdanowicz, to replace him on this position. He, of course, agreed, and the most important task at the time was to secure the property, archives, and collections of the institute. It was not easy because of heavy bombardment of the district of the city where institute is located. Buildings were without doors and windows. It was very difficult to protect against looters. Thanks to a strong demand of Jozef Zwierzycki addressed to the city commander, the valuable properties of the institutes were fortunately saved. Zwierzycki's attitude to all these things which happened at the beginning of the war was decidedly and brave, and it was not tolerated for a long time. In April 1941, Jozef Zwierzycki was accused of collaboration with the underground armed forces and arrested, and a month later he was sent to Auschwitz. For Indonesian auditory, I would like to explain. Auschwitz was the largest German Nazi concentration camp and extermination center. During 5 years of Auschwitz existence, 1.1 million people, men, women, and children, lost their lives there. And most of them were Jews. The second largest group were Poles, and another nations were Roma, Sindhi, it means Gypsies, Russians, Czechs, Belarusians, Yugoslavs, and French. And Zwierzycki was a prisoner of Auschwitz. It was a horribly and tragic place. He was he worked in the crew of construction crew, and was forced to work beyond his strength. Fortunately, he succeeded to move his position in this in Auschwitz as on a translator for Norwegian prisoners, because Germans has problem with communicating with Norwegians. And Zwierzycki, as you remember, met some people speaking this language in Sweden, in Kiruna. And this it's caused that Zwierzycki was moved to work in the office, and it was for him much better. Due to firm efforts made by German, Dutch, and Japanese geologists, but mainly Professor Alfred Benz, Zwierzycki was released from Auschwitz. At the beginning of July 1942, he was transported to Berlin and kept in the hotel where he worked for needs of German geology. He translated some scientific papers from Dutch to German, and he worked on 2 geological dictionaries, German Polish and German Dutch. In summer 1944, Zwierzycki was escorted to the Carpathians, it is still in Poland, under the pretext of collecting geological materials needed by Nazi Germans. During a break in this journey in Krakow, he was allowed to meet his wife and children. That morning, it was 1st of August 1944, Zwierzycki escapes from a convoy in the center of the Krakow. For Germans, it was for Germans convoying him, it was shock. They searched him for a couple of hours, but on the same day, a few hours later, an uprising break out in Warsaw, and this diverted Germans' attention and caused that Zwierzycki succeed to hid in the apartment of his friend and brother-in-law Kazimierz Maślankiewicz, where he was till the liberation of Krakow from German occupation in January 1945. It's a photo from this time. He changed his look a little, and in such a hidden room in the apartment of Kazimierz Maślankiewicz, he worked on some papers, on materials from Indonesia. Shortly afterwards, the Zwierzycki family visited their former apartment in Warsaw, but it appeared that everything is damaged, that they lost all their belongings, including scientific materials. Warsaw was completely damaged, completely destroyed after Warsaw Uprising. And in this situation, Jozef Zwierzycki to move to Wrocław. And I would like to say a couple of information on changing borders of Poland after the Second World War. Wrocław, formerly Breslau, is located in area attached to Poland after Second World War, which previously belonged to Germany. It was the result of moving Polish borders into West. Before the war, Breslau was a large city and an important scientific, cultural, and industrial center. At the end of war, all German residents of Breslau were expelled by German authorities with order to go west to Germany. They made it during very strong winter, and a lot of people died before of cold. Breslau was turned into fortress called Festung Breslau. That was eventually captured by Soviet and Polish soldiers, but the city was destroyed in 80%. Shortly after the end of the war, Polish people began to arrive in Wrocław from various regions of Poland, but mainly from areas attached to Soviet Union, which are marked on this map with light gray color. And Wrocław was still burning when Jozef Zwierzycki came there in May 1945. He arrived with a group of professors, pioneers, to save scientific and cultural goods left by Germans and organize higher education. During this period, Zwierzycki was pioneer for the second time in his life, in very different circumstances. All the organizing work on of this group were very intensive, and in the middle of November it was first lecture at the university and technical university, which were in this moment connected. It means 15th of November is feast of university and technical university in Wrocław, because it was the beginning of first academic year. Zwierzycki take care about his academic career during this time. At the end of 1945, he got habilitation at Mining Academy in Kraków, based on a paper written in Bandung regarding the gold deposits. And 3 years later, he became full professor. In 1948, he became a head of new organized department, the Department of Stratigraphy, where we with Alina still work. After the war, Zwierzycki published, during his Polish work, he published 25 papers concerning mainly Lower Silesia. It means this region of Poland where Wrocław is, Lower Silesian mineral resources, deposits of copper, lead and zinc, tin, brown coal, and also on stratigraphy, hydrogeology, Cenozoic volcanism, and nature preservation, as well as geology of Indonesia. He was a member of different committees, advisor of government, although our authorities, communistic authorities, were not, they didn't like him simply, and he didn't like them. And this collaboration was very, very official. And he was a member, he became a member of a number of foreign scientific societies. And in 1957, Zwierzycki succeeded to go abroad, what was not very easy during this time, to attend a geological congress in Hanover in Germany, where he met Professor Alfred Benz and thanked him for saving his life. Zwierzycki had very broad geological knowledge, and he had enormous professional experience. So he was able to give lectures on several subjects in geology, what is quite unusual, because he gave courses on stratigraphy, economic geology, regional geology, applied geophysics, and hydrogeology. Professor Zwierzycki was able to get students interested in various fields of geology, not only in theory, but always focusing on practical aspect in geologist's work. And he was a fascinating speaker. His discursive lecture with many digressions and anecdotes about Indonesia were enthusiastically received by many students. Professor Zwierzycki had such a charismatic personality, and he shaped moral and patriotic education of whole generation of geology student of our university. He also had lectures at Mining Academy in Krakow. Because of very modest, very low, small university salaries, Zwierzycki had some financial hardships and was freelanced as a sworn translator of English, Dutch, German, and French. I didn't mention that his friend and brother-in-law, Kazimierz Maślankiewicz, also professor of geology, during this time also worked in our university. He still lived in Krakow, but he was traveling each week to our university to have lectures and to collaborate, to meet his friend, Professor Zwierzycki. And one thing more, which is quite important, it is participation of Professor Zwierzycki in copper deposit discovery. Copper deposits in our region were not completely unknown during this time, because German geologists knew copper deposits in the Sudets, but they believed that those deposits are not continued to the north. And Zwierzycki, studying maps, said that probably copper-bearing shales should be found north of this area where they were known. And he gave a speech on this subject in 1954 in Central Board of Geology in Warsaw. Unfortunately, he didn't publish this speech, but it was only orally presented. And he suggested then in what direction works should be continued. And this concept had a strong impact on future works of Polish Geological Institute, which was made projects on drilling. And in 1957, first drillings with positive result of copper ore occurrence were drilled. And the resource of copper deposits discovered on this way are very large, and they are on the 5th place in the global resource ranking after Chile, Australia, Peru, and Mexico. And certainly work of Professor Zwierzycki gave scientific background and indicated directions of prospecting, of searching those deposits. Unfortunately, it was close to the end of Professor Zwierzycki's work. He retired at age of 72 in 1960 and died on 1st of May 1961 in Wrocław. And 5 years later, Zwierzycki was honored with the first group prize in science, technology, and art for contribution in the discovery the Lubin-Sieroszowice copper deposits and making its first documentation. Thank you, it's all. Thank you very much for attention.
Thank you very much, Anna Górecka-Nowak, for a very exciting presentation. It's very fascinating that main facts from the life of Józef Zwierzycki were connected with the main famous historical events, yes, that he left Europe before the First World War and became to Poland before the Second World War and escaped, yes, from the German captivity during the Warsaw Uprising. Yes, in Poland we honor in different way Józef Zwierzycki. For example, we have a boulevard named Józef Zwierzycki, school of Józef Zwierzycki, and others. Yes, we have discussed about it after all the presentation. May I ask now to invite Professor Kusumadinata or Dr. Milca would like to say no at this moment, no at the end. Yes,
yeah. Direct to Professor Kusuma.
Yes. Thank you very much. With a great pleasure, I would like to invite Professor Prayatna Kusumadinata to present about the impact of the scientific contribution of Professor Zwierzycki to the geo-resources potential of Indonesia. Yes.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here to say something about Professor Zwierzycki. I think I'll share the full screen now. Yes, where is it? Yeah.
Yes.
I see. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Yes. We see.
Your Excellency, the Ambassador of Poland, I see you still here. And yang terhormat Ibu Rektor ITB atau wakilnya, my dear fellow panelists, my dear audience. Well, I've been requested to represent ITB to say something about Professor Zwierzycki, about the natural resources potential of Indonesia as the impact of Professor Zwierzycki scientific contribution to Indonesia. Well, I do not have nice pictures to show you. I have just comments and just only one graph to show, and that's also because I'm given that permission from Hand. Thank you for that, Hand. Then let's see. The great contribution of Dr. Jozef Zwierzycki to Indonesia will be presented by Dr. G.T. van Gorsel, which I concur greatly. Dr. Zwierzycki was a towering figure in the history of early geological exploration in Indonesia. That's no doubt about it. But I'm sad to say that the present-day Indonesian geoscientist has little or no knowledge about the history of the geology of Indonesia. But first of all, I would like to reiterate Professor Zwierzycki's great contribution to the geology of Indonesia, as already discussed by Han, and its impact on the georesources of Indonesia. Then I'd like to discuss why the Indonesian geological community has little or practically no knowledge of the pioneering work of Professor Zwierzycki. Now, I think, and I strongly believe that the greatest contribution of Zwierzycki to the geologic knowledge of Indonesia are first his overview geological maps, over 6 cartons of the whole archipelago, what is known now as in Indonesia, on 1 to 1 million scale, giving an insight on the regional setting, which consists of several map sheets, I believe it was 6, and also probably the first geotectonic map of the entire archipelago, which is on scale of 1 to 5,000. I think that's a very great contribution. And with his appointment as head of Geological Survey in 1935, and I think before that he's even leading the first systematic program of the Geological Survey of Indonesia. At that time, there was a geological section of the main deans on a larger scale, which is 1 to 200,000 for Sumatra and other islands, and 100,000 for Java. And for Sumatra, he even authored several map sheets. Unfortunately, this program was terminated due to the lack of funds and the advent of the Second World War. After the independence of Indonesia, the program could not be resumed to the technological development of cartography and the advancement of geologic system, and the entire new systematic geological mapping program was initiated and completed within 30 years for the whole archipelago. However, the great work of Zwierzycki forms the foundation of the geological systematic mapping of Indonesia, that's for sure. Then I'd like to say something about the impact of Zwierzycki's work on the energy and mineral potential of Indonesia. Although Zwierzycki's early work involved the investigation of oil and gas at that time was not a commodity, particularly in Aceh and northern Papua, and the mineral deposits, I think it's also Bangka Island and Rejebong Island, as been discussed by Dr. Van Gorsel. I think it is his contribution to the regional geology knowledge gained through the geologic explorations throughout the Indonesian archipelago, Papua, Sulawesi, Sumatra, as it is reflected by his compilation of geological map, which has established the potential georesource of Indonesia. So after his work, then Indonesia, at that time, in East Indies, has been established as to be rich in oil and mineral richness. It is well established that the knowledge of the regional geology, as reflected by geological map, forms the basis of georesources evaluation of a region. The impact of Professor Zwierzycki's work is directly or indirectly felt during the exploration boom in the 60s, 70s, even in the 80s, as the regional geologic knowledge and geological map are required for a successful exploration program that result into the discoveries a mineral deposit, oil and gas accumulation during this period. At that time, the only available geologic map are those who compiled or even authored by Jozef Zwierzycki. I think that's the impact of the thesis work on the mineral potential of energy and mineral potential of Indonesia. That's a great impact. Now, I'm sad to say that the present-day geologists of Indonesia are generally unaware of the Zwierzycki great work, as well as that of the other Dutch pioneers to the contribution of the geology of Indonesia. I think I'm sad to say that. There are several reasons for this, as I like to discuss. First of all is the language barrier. And then the lack of literature on the history of geosciences, such as biographies describing the professional careers and achievements of early geologists, which is until now probably lacking, or even now it's not been even published. I think Hans van Gorsel has started to write on this, but not published yet. But then again, the present rapid development in the modern methods, concept, and theories of geosciences resulted into a huge accumulation of new data. So there appears to be a break in the continuity of scientific development, as reflected in the numbers of the publications, as shown in the following graph. Yeah, I have borrowed this graph from Hans van Gorsel, which he with his permission. I think this graph would say something. First, about the language barrier. As you could see, that before the Second World War, the work of Dutch geologists or even other European geologists are either written in Dutch, German, and not too much in English. And that has changed after the Second World War as well, independence, because Dutch is not used anymore. It's been replaced by English. English has been the main language, and even the Indonesian language is gradually now also used in publication. And then, of course, some of the French journals are also publishing something about Indonesia. Now, I would like to say here that the present Indonesian geology awareness of practically ignorance of Zwierzycki's great work in Indonesia is mainly due to language. Most of the work of Zwierzycki is written in Dutch, which is mostly the case with all publications in World War II, few in German. I think Zwierzycki never wrote in German, and last few in English, mostly in the proceedings in international conferences. The use of Dutch language was discontinued after its independence, was replaced by English. I'm probably one of the last generation of Indonesian geologists who still can read and speak Dutch and were studied under Dutch professors. And I think the reason why I was also chosen to speak about Zwierzycki's great work, because I'm familiar. During my student years, I was familiar with Zwierzycki publication and maps. As at the time, the only reference we had was pre-World War II publication, since geological research, investigation, and exploration has barely assumed. Now, although there is a lack of present data of World War II publication of pioneers of the geology of Indonesia, I think that is also the thing. I know I'm familiar with Zwierzycki's writings, publication, geological maps, but hardly knew who he was. Only after the writing of Hans van Gorsel, called Milestone and Pioneers of Geology of Indonesia, which is not even has been published, but I have good relations with John, that I got a preview and that I'm aware of the personal data and nationalities of the great the personal and nationalities and biographies of these great contributors to the early geology of Indonesia. It's quite a revelation to me that Zwierzycki appeared to be of Polish nationality, because I thought he was Dutch. I should have guessed it, I think, as I knew that family names ending with ski or ki are Polish origin, but I wasn't aware of that at that time. Well, since early my childhood days, I have known Poland. I'm familiar with Poland, known for the scientific achievement of Nobel Prize laureate Marie Curie, known as Madame Curie, which my mother idolized. And I remember when we watched a movie about her. My mother was a teacher at the time. Later, I also become familiar with the great works of pianists and composers such as Frédéric Chopin. And I'm certain I'm also aware of Poland's complicated war-torn history, with especially the struggle and suffering of the Polish people during the World War II. It's quite a revelation to me that Zwierzycki become a national hero and a great professor of geology of international standing on the European scene, with his background of his great experience on the geology of Indonesia. Then again, another reason on unawareness, unfamiliarity of the Indonesia with the work of Zwierzycki is because he has overwhelmed with a vast amount of geologic data after the independence generated, as reflected by the number of publications as we showed before. It is by the rapid development of exploration geology in which subsurface data, marine data become available, which is not available before the Second World War. This has been mainly brought about by the exploration boom of the oil and minerals resources by international as well as national companies, as a result of the resources that has been indicated by the maps of Zwierzycki. Now, also the field investigation and research by the government institution has increased tremendously. And unfortunately, with cooperation with numerous foreign governments, I said unfortunately because they are all English speaking, such as US, UK, Australia, Japan, and Germany. And there's been advances made in the geosciences, in the methodology, concept, analytical techniques, even revolutionary theories, which has applied in Indonesia. And so the Indonesian geologist is preoccupied with these tremendous new data and new theories about Indonesia. This renders the pioneering work of the early geologists simply as classics, which tend to be not even known. So that's one of the reasons. So there is a break with the past. Yeah. Therefore, in the next generation of geologists, there appears to be a complete break with the past, or disruption in the scientific communication community, I would say. The only link with the geologic work during the colonial times, the monumental work by Van Bemmelen, published in English in 1949, which is titled The Geology of Indonesia, which is very often cited as reference to the works of the geologists during the pre-World War II, which summarizes geologic knowledge gained during colonial time, including the great works of Zwierzycki. Now, about the link of Zwierzycki to ITB, well, it remains elusive to me. It should be noted that the Technische Hogeschool in Bandung, the predecessor of ITB for the Second World War II, taught only civil engineering and associated engineering basic sciences. No geology or mining engineering courses were taught. The closest to geology would be the subject, what is in Dutch titled toegepaste aardkunde, or applied earth science, taught by the scientific staff of the Geological Survey, which is the mining bureau at the time, the mining mijnbouwdienst. I have a book, a yearbook of the 15th lustrum of the Technical Survey Badu of 1935, celebrating 15 years of the existence of the Technische Hogeschool. This book listed all the professors, lecturers, docents, including assistant or even the administrative staff. To my regret, it does not reveal the name Zwierzycki. He must be the young lecturer of applied science from the Geological Survey only most after 1935. That is what I found out. So it must be after 1935, of which I have no records. And I have to I regret. I have no knowledge of this. In conclusion, I think this webinar on the commemoration of 30 years decease of Professor Zwierzycki is an important reminder to the Indonesian geological community, which tends to have little knowledge of the great initial work during colonial time that established the groundwork for the present-day knowledge on the geology and its georesources of Indonesia. We should appreciate the pure pioneering spirit of many great European geologists during the hardship of pre-World War harsh natural physical conditions, with little to no means of transportation network, during which geological investigation and exploration required a full-scale expedition lasting for several months, with result into great ideas and knowledge of the geology of the archipelago. I think this webinar could also be a milestone in bridging not only between geological society of Poland and Indonesia, but also the gap between the early pioneering geologists and the present-day Indonesian geoscientists. I hope this webinar will be followed up by the establishment of a cooperation program in the field of geosciences. Professor Dr. Jozef Zwierzycki, great scientific contribution to geology in Indonesia, should form the basis for this cooperation between ITB Geology Department or any other Indonesian universities, with Geology Department of Glasgow University, Jagiellonian University, or any other public university. I hope that the legacy of his great work will be remembered best by a cooperation program bearing his name, for instance, Zwierzycki Scholarship Program. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor, for the very interesting presentations, which shows us the contribution of Jozef Zwierzycki work for the development of Indonesia. Yes, he had an author for the first map of Indonesian archipelago, and some of this map were used during prospecting of mineral resources, yes, in Indonesia in 1960s, 1970s, yes. And it's a very good idea, yes, to start to cooperate between Indonesian high schools and University of Wrocław or Jagiellonian University in Krakow. Yes, so I think I will discuss about it at the end. And now we have 3 questions, yes. The first questions from Herman Darman is: how many languages did Professor Jozef Zwierzycki speak? use is in work in Indonesia, yes, and any report or paper in English. At the beginning, I only can say that Professor Jozef Zwierzycki know a lot of languages, for example, French, yes, Dutch, German, English, Polish, Norwegian, yes, but maybe someone would like to ask more about it. Maybe Han or Anna. Some Indonesian, I think, yes, also.
Well, I know he always speak. I'm not expert on language from this part of the world, but I found information that he always knew Malaya language, whatever it means. Well,
I say Indonesia.
Yes.
Similar with
Indonesian,
Indonesia.
yeah.
Yes, similar.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Yes, but he's written mainly in Dutch, yes. Some papers in English or German, I think. Yes,
Yes,
and
that's correct. Yeah.
correct. Yes. Okay. Maybe the second questions from Herman Darman. Does Wrocław University keeps Professor Jozef Zwierzycki work from Indonesia? We have only some publication, yes, in our library. Maybe Anya said something about this publication.
All these materials after Professor Zwierzycki are very not. Majority of his private collections and materials lost during the war, and he published many papers and maps during his in Indonesia work and after the war. We tried to collect some of them. But anyway, I think Han von Gorsel has a bigger collection. At our university, there are some papers, and we got copies of some maps from Han as a gift. I know there are some materials in Geological Institute in Warsaw, and in Krobia, this small town where Zwierzycki was born, is a school named with his name, and they have quite a big archive there, but they are focused on collecting rather memories of his life than more than publications.
Yes,
I like to comment. May I comment?
Yeah.
I would like to comment because I think the Geological Survey of Indonesia, what is called the Pusat Survey Geologi Indonesia, is where Professor Zwierzycki used to work in before Second World War. I think he has a collection in the archives or in the library of Professor Zwierzycki, manuscripts, some personal details, I think, and was it publications and other things. I think it's still there. I think we should have a look at it's in the geological, in the same building with the Geological Museum in at the Bandar Geologi, the Geological Agency in Bandung. So I think that's worth a look. I've contacted the people at the geologists there, and they think they are going to look for that and see what happened and see what is still there. I think it must be there. Must be there at the archives or even in the library. of the museum of the Geological Survey. This is what I would like to add. Thank you.
Thank you. We have also some copies of schools of hominids, yes, at our university, because Jozef Zwierzycki sent some specimens, some materials to Poland and to Leida, to the Netherlands, yes, and now people still working on some materials of Professor Jozef Zwierzycki. And also in the museum in Poznań and Warsaw, we have some monuments, but it was mainly archaeological, yes, and some instruments and some other things. The collections. Yes, thanks. Maybe yes. Sorry.
May I ask something?
I would like to the next questions, if I may, yes. How the relationship between Professor Zwierzycki and Professor Bemelen in terms of geological science was. It was the questions. Who would like to give the answer, Han? May I ask?
Yeah, can you repeat the question? What is the relationship between
relationship between Bemelen and Jozef Zwierzycki? Relationship.
For most of the time, Zwierzycki was von Bemelen's boss, until Zwierzycki retired in 1938. For the previous 10 or 15 years of von Bemelen's life, he always worked for Zwierzycki in the Sumatra mapping and later Java mapping. So I'm not sure what their personal relation was, but I never heard anything unusual about it, so it's probably okay. One thing that's perhaps worth mentioning is that I've seen in archives, I've seen a lot of personal correspondence by from Duifjes and Tensenhoek and all that. And before he became head of the Geological Survey, they always speak very positive about him, and he's very well respected. Now, when he became the head, it was during time of still further budget cuts, and he had to fire people, and I think his popularity decreased a little bit during that time, and it's just a result of the circumstances that he had to do. But it doesn't speak less of the man. He'll always be a respected scientist, even though some of his underlings may feel like they were not treated as well as they hoped.
Thank you very much, Han. Excuse me, Benjamin. Yes, would like to say something. Yes, sorry. Yes, please.
Okay, thank you, Alina. I just would like to ask, but before that, I was Professor Kusuma Dinata's students at the time in 1985. I was mapping in North Sumatra with him, and then I used Zwierzycki publication maps at the time to guide my mapping. It's quite interesting because it's quite detailed, and it's also I know his name by that only. When this issue came, I also discussed with Professor Kusuma Dinata concerning Zwierzycki at the time. So yeah, I know only by the map of publication. I don't know that he was very let's say pioneers in the term of geology of Indonesia. So my next question to Alina or to Anna is there any plan or is there any publication or biography concerning his name in Poland? Maybe a book, something that we can use or we can bring to Indonesia as a maybe as the way to introduce him based on on the biography or something. Is there any, or are you planning to make one or something like that? So that's my question.
Yes, we have some articles, yes, and also some book, but yes, we have 2 articles with Anna and one with Han in English, yes, about Jozef Zwierzycki, but it was in a journal, scientific journal, and we have in Poland a book, but wrote in Polish, written in Polish, yes. And we have some others, but short articles. Yes, maybe Anna would like to continue or no?
May I interrupt a little bit? May I interrupt a little bit?
Yes. Yes, please.
I would
Please.
about that the biography of
Paper.
Zwierzycki. I think Han here, Han Gosel, is
Han.
writing a book on the on pioneers and milestones in the Geology of Indonesia. Unfortunately, it has not been published yet.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
He's writing all about the great pioneers in geology, the milestones. I think it's going to be a great book. I think.
Yeah, I think.
But
Yes.
unfortunately, it's not been published yet. But I have previewed his certain chapters of that, and then I certainly appreciate that, and so I know more who is who in the early in the work on in the geology of Indonesia. I think book one by Dr. Van Gossel would be a very good book on the early history of the geology of Indonesia, including.
So I'm looking forward to your book, Van.
Yes, yes. Han Van Gorsel has the great knowledge, yes, about biography of Jozef Zwierzycki. Yes, yes, yes. Professor has wrote a book about yes biography. Yes.
Yeah, if I may say, am I still on?
Yes.
Yes, yes, please. Han.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I've spent much of I've worked for the last 2 years, 7 days a week on writing this book, and it's gotten totally out of hand. And I'm writing about more than 200 geologists of Indonesia. And of course, Zwierzycki is, he's definitely in my top 5 of well-known geologists in Indonesia. So, yeah, but most of what will be in the book is also is in the paper that we wrote in Berita Sedimentology 6 months or 8 months ago, together with Anna and Alina. Now, a lot of the information that I received from Zwierzycki's personal life came from Anna and Alina 2 years ago and later. So that's much appreciated. And yeah, the book will be supposedly, my first pass of the book will be finished in the next month or 2 months or so. Then it'll probably be some more final editing, and all I need is a publisher and some sponsors to get it in print and eventually a sort of an online edition of it. But I appreciate Prof. Kusuma's kind words and his interest in the thing. I hope there will be more like you that find it as interesting as I do.
Yes. Thank you very much, Han. We have one question more. Yes, what is the current level of interest among Polish youth to study geology? Level interest, yes, from yes, we have students on geology, yes, and other. But we have less than in the previous time, yes. But it still is interest between young people to study geology, but not as great as it was some times ago. Yes, thanks. Yes, maybe someone would like to say something, or it is time to summary. Yes, by me, or yes, please, yes.
If I may to add something in regards to studies in Poland, I would like to stress that every year the Polish government proposes the so-called Łukasiewicz scholarship for the young people from Asia, Africa, and I have to say that the biggest recipient of these scholarships are Indonesian students, and these scholarships, it's every year it is about 70 students invited to Poland, and usually they study technical or engineering programs. So I hope that some of them are geologicals as well. Yes. So I know that there are Indonesian students in Mining Academy of Krakow.
Yes.
So maybe they study there. But as a Polish embassy, we promote education in Poland very much. And I think that after this webinar, we will focus on these studies even more. Yeah. Mm-hmm. If I may to say simply thank you for this great webinar. I think it was a good lesson for me personally to learn about Professor Zwierzycki life, and I do hope that we will be in touch, especially with the Institute of Technology of Bandung, but also with Professor Han, and we are very happy to cooperate even closely to commemorate Professor Zwierzycki in the future. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes,
but
thank
I don't
you
want
very much.
to finish. Maybe you want to close the webinar.
Yes. I had heard about this program. Yes, Łukasiewicz. Yes, maybe I said only a few sentences in summary that Professor Zwierzycki was a great geologist, yes, mining engineer, academic teacher, discoverer of natural resources, yes, mineral resources, researchers of paleontological sites of vertebrates, of hominids, and he was engaged in prospecting of mineral resources both in Indonesia and in Poland, yes, and also he developed a pioneering program of mapping in Indonesia and as well as in Poland, yes, and he published this in different languages, and he gave also the lectures at the Technology Institute of Bandung and at the University of Wrocław and the Jagiellonian University, and it is very well to organize it. It was a very good idea to organize to this webinar to honor, yes, the Jozef Zwierzycki work in Indonesia. And we, as said Professor Prayatna Kusumadinata, we should bring this to remember about pioneers, geological pioneers who used to work in hard conditions, yes, and yes, this work, and bring up some other resources, yes, and discoveries. Yes, thank you very much. And maybe Dr. Mircam said something, yes, also.
Okay, Alina, thank you. Yeah, thank you, moderator, for the chance to deliver a closing remark in this very warm and intimate webinar. Just short closing remark on behalf of Geological Engineering Study Program, Faculty of Earth Sciences and Technology, Institut Teknologi Bandung. I wish we can use this meeting to strengthen the collaboration between Indonesia and Poland, and of course, as a starting point to create future collaboration between Bandung Institute of Technology or other universities in Indonesia and University of Wrocław or other university and main institution in Polandia. Thank you very much.
Yes, thanks. It's a very, very, very good idea, yes, to start to cooperate between Polish Institute and Indonesia, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Distinguished panelists,
Yes.
present all speakers. Thank you for your attention. I hope that this webinar will bring more information and knowledge for us, especially about the work of Professor Jozef Zwierzycki. On behalf of the Embassy of Poland in Jakarta, I would like to say thank you one more time and wish you have a good day.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you
Very much.
Bye for all. Okay, bye.
Okay, thank you. I will close this webinar meeting and see you again.
You're fine. Thank you, Alina and Anna.
Yes, thank you.
Terima kasih, Paul. Okay, bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Yeah.
Terima kasih Dr. Mirzan, terima kasih.
Ya, terima kasih semuanya.